Yeah, my name is James Edwards, and I am the European, Middle East, and Africa Sales Manager for OpenAthens. And as Beth explained, I'm going to run through sort of a demo of OpenAthens today, so you get a good idea of the features available to you and how the system works. I will start off with showing it from an end user's perspective, and then after that we'll jump in to the sort of back end and to the administrative area for OpenAthens. So to start off with, a little bit on OpenAthens. So this is kind of where we are at the moment. So OpenAthens has been helping over 2,000 organizations worldwide enable access to hundreds of thousands of journals, databases, and ebooks for over 4 million end users. We've been going around since the sort of the turn of the millennium, and and we've been progressing ever since then. So this is a quick slide just to kind of show OpenAthens as a product, where it sits kind of within your library. And what OpenAthens is all about is removing barriers to knowledge. So it is a single sign-on system, an access and management tool, and it helps your users access the content. And it does this by meaning they only have to have one username and password to access an array of databases and apps and research journals, etc., that the libraries subscribe to. And the most crucial thing, they only need one username and password, but they also only have to have to log in once per session. And I will show you that coming up in a bit. So just to put that in perspective, let's say you have an end user, they are trying to access some content, and all the time when they're hitting those journal sites, they'll be asked for login boxes, username and password, and this will make them really frustrated. I'm sure you've all been there yourself. You trying to get into a social network site maybe, or another site, and you've just forgotten your username and password. You keep having a guess, you end up getting frustrated, and you move elsewhere. And we want to stop users doing this. And so this is where OpenAthens will come in. With their one username and password, they log in once, and after that they can have access to all the content the library subscribe to without having to log in again. So this will then mean they can research better, carry out their jobs better, depending what market you're in, and it provides a much better all-round user experience. And this in turn will then maximize and increase the engagement with the library and the users. And more importantly, your users are using the content that you've paid good money for. So that's kind of a brief overview of OpenAthens. What I'll do now is I'll show you this all working. So I'm going to start off with it with an end user's perspective. And then after that, I shall jump into the OpenAthens Administration area. So bear with me for a moment whilst I load up the internet. So what I'm going to show you is a customer of ours based out in Australia. They are the Clinical Knowledge Network, and they provide healthcare service for the whole of Queensland. And they're happy for us to demo their environment, and so you can actually see how users will access content. To start off with, OpenAthens is a fully hosted service. So for OpenAthens to work, all you need is a internet connection and a browser, and it can work across all devices. So whether you're on mobile, laptops, tablets, it doesn't matter, OpenAthens will work. So this is the CKN login page to their library. Now we understand users will try and access content in many different ways, and I'm going to try and show you that a few of those ways through this demo. However, this is what we think most common or most popular way, is that where the librarian, they will encourage users to go to the library page first, and from there, then they will access the content. So in this case here, CKN, they like to push all their users. They log in to the library, so that login has happened, and then from then on, they can access all the content. So I've been given a username and password here. Now these are my OpenAthens credentials, and they have been created for me. I will touch on later that there are a number of ways to create OpenAthens accounts, but there are two main options you really have. You have OpenAthens as a user directory, or we can connect to your existing user directory, meaning that we can use the students or the doctors, nurses' everyday institutional login. So it could be a university email address or another organization email address. But I'll touch on that a bit later. So I'm going to log in now. And what will happen now is an OpenAthens session is going to open up in this browser. So think of it as an OpenAthens token, and that will now remain open for 8 hours. So as long as I don't have closed down this browser session, I will have access to all the content. This is the sort of standard library page. You might have something similar. You've got most used resources here and links down the side to all the databases, etc. And I'm just going to show a discovery service toolway. So this is EDS, but we work with many other, so that's EBSCO discovery service, but we work with many other third-party discovery tools as well. And that is what OpenAthens can also do. It's not just about accessing content. It's also about accessing all your resources and services, applications and things like that we can work with. So in this case here, I'm a user and I'm interested in blood. So now I'm going to search for that term. And as you'll see now, the URLs are going to change very quickly. It's going to pick up my OpenAthens session and log me in to the EBSCO discovery service. Let me full screen this. So there we go. I'm now logged in onto the EDS page and it's brought through my term. It's searched those databases for the various content that's related to my search term. In this case here, I don't want to go straight to the full text. That's simply done here. I'm going to show you where you have to go off-site to the site directly. So I'm interested in this one here. There's a link resolver now, which will tell me where I can find this full text article. I apologize for my internet being a little bit slow here. There we go. So in this case, it's a clinical key. I'm going to click on that, and this will now take me to that full text article. Now you'll see again, the URLs up there changing very quickly. It's picking up my OpenAthens session, and now it's just taking me to that page, authenticating me to that full text article. So there we go. I've reached that. Now, one of the key things here you'll see is clinical key at the top here. They've noticed I'm from the Clinical Knowledge Network. But where OpenAthens is very different from other recognition and authentication systems is we're not based upon IP. We use technology called SAML and federated access. And what this means is that certain publisher sites can identify you as an individual user. So in this case here, it also knows me as James Edwards. And what this means is you get a lot more added personalization that you won't get using IP. So I have my saved searches, my search history, I can save favorites and things like that, meaning that your users have a much better experience when they head to these sites. I've experienced it in the past and my times that often you can find a journal, sometimes it can be really hard to find it again. But here you can just save the content and it's there for you whenever you need to come back. So that is one of the big benefits that OpenAthens can bring for these publisher sites that allow this personalization, that you're instantly logged in to your own personal account on their sites. So that's sort of one user journey there. Just to go through it again, so I logged in to the Clinical Knowledge Network. I then went to a third-party software service. I didn't have to log in. The EBSCO, the OpenAthens token logged me in. And then I went to the full text article where, again, I didn't have to log in. It picked up my session and it logged me straight to that content. Each one of those steps would have had a login box if I didn't have a system like OpenAthens in place. Let me just go now to a couple of quick links as well. So just to show you that every publisher site is obviously different, I'm going to click on a few of these just to log into lots of separate ones, just to show you working. So each one of those I would have had to have logged into, but here I go. So Micromedics, it's a very, they don't offer that personalization touch, but I'm logged in. It says log out up there. I could search this database here for various content. MIMS Online, again, a bit more basic. I haven't set up that user individual personalization on this page, but they know where I'm from. I'm logged in. They've even brought the search term across for me here. I could click on these and access that content. And then there's Embase. They do have that. There we go at the top. They know who I am. James Edwards. I have my personalization on this page. I'm logged in. I'm ready to search and carry on my research. So that's 3 different publisher sites there where I haven't had to log in. I'm already in there and I've authorized through. If a user was, however, to go via Google, you can try and encourage users to go as many different ways, but often this is where they might end up. And let's say they've been on Science Direct a lot. Apologies for my spelling there. So they've been going to Science Direct, so they go straight to Science Direct. Now, at this stage, I haven't come from a link from the website page or anything like that, so Science Direct has no idea who I am or where I'm coming from. If I click Sign On here, I'm using OpenAthens, so I click OpenAthens. What it'll do is it'll pick up my OpenAthens token or session that's happening, and it will log me in. So there we go. It says James Edwards up there in the top right-hand corner. I'm logged in. I'm now free to search away on the Science Direct site for that content. So I hope that's kind of given you a good idea of OpenAthens from the end user's perspective. Ideally, they don't really see it happening or working. It just happens. They click a link, they access the content, and that's what we want. We want the journey for them to be as seamless as possible. We also want it to be as familiar to them. So the only other way what might have happened, if I was a user that came straight onto my internet browser, I went straight to Science Direct, I haven't logged in at that stage. So I would have to search for my institution, and what we'll do is we'll take you to the institution login page. So it's a familiar page to them. They log in and then takes them back to Science Direct. That is what we would aim to do in that situation, just to then have them logged in, an OpenAthens session going, and then they can click away on all the links they like. Okay, so that's the sort of end of the end user's journey. I think we've got a couple of questions I can answer now.
Yeah, we've had one question come in so far, which is, do you have to have created an account with the different vendors prior to OpenAthens logging you into your vendor account? You showed a couple that had your personal account showing, but you also showed one screen where I saw my account and log in beside it.
Yes, so the first time you come up to a page like that, it will ask you to set up an account if you're a new user to it, and this is where you agree to then give the publisher your information to set up that personalization. So yes, some sites I've done it on, others I haven't, and not all publishers will offer that service as well. It's down to the publisher. Okay. All right, so that's OpenAthens from the end user then. And what I'll do now is I'll jump in and show you the admin area for OpenAthens. So I'm just going to close down a lot of these now, and I will just briefly stop sharing my screen as I log in to the admin area. Now this will be the Clinical Knowledge's Networks admin area, just to keep it familiar. So it is a live account and working for us. And, okay, so again, OpenAthens fully hosted service. You can access this admin area, from wherever you like. All you need is that internet connection and the browser. You will log in and come across your admin page. And from here, there is an array of features and functions available to you. As I mentioned, fully hosted, that does mean no need for IT to be involved. We are all about trying to give the control to the librarian so they can actually manage the resources and the usage of their resources themselves. I would explain a bit later where IT can get involved, but we want to make this as simple as possible. Also, when you log in, you receive the most up-to-date version of OpenAthens. So we are constantly developing the product, and there's no need for you to update OpenAthens. When you log in, you get the most up-to-date version. So on this homepage here, we have a couple of widgets and quick links, and it's kind of an overview of what's happening on your account. One of the first things you may want to do is create OpenAthens accounts. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a couple of ways of doing that. The two key differences is having OpenAthens as the directory or connecting to an already existing user directory. Let's start off with creating accounts and using OpenAthens as your directory. Now, there are a few ways of doing this. You can go to the Accounts tab up the top here, and here you've got a number of options. Let's say Add and Personal Account. This quickly loads up a wizard which you just follow through to create a single user account. So you have a prefix here, the CKN, this is customizable. You can set that up. You choose the username, initial, surname, obviously very popular, whatever you want to be. You set that up. Expiry date of the account, you can specify the password now if you wish. There's a lot of options you can do. You follow that wizard through, and at the end, an email will be sent to that user with an activation link to activate their account, and away they go. So that's great if you've got one or two users coming up to the library desk asking for an account, maybe day users or something like that. You can set that up quite easily there. However, obviously, that's going to get time consuming if you've got more than, say, 3 or 4 to do. So we also have a bulk upload function. So again, in the same area, you go to bulk upload, click on the bulk template, and this you just download a template in Excel, which you then fill out. So I'll just let that download, and now I'm going to bring it up. And from here, this is just a way in which you can now upload thousands of accounts in one go. So maybe you have a list somewhere which you can copy and paste over. There are a number of ways you can do this. Now, it might look a little bit complicated, but actually all we need are the highlighted columns. So status, whether the account will be enabled or disabled, first name, last name, and an email address. So that's the only information we need to actually create an OpenAthens account. All these other columns are completely customizable. So we'll talk a little bit later on attributes as well, but also if you wanted to go further into OpenAthens and after this you wanted to know a little bit more, attributes will come up a lot in discussion. And what this means is by giving us an attribute on your users, so for example here, department, the position they're in, you could have job role, you could have the course they're on if they're students, you could have the year they enrolled, alumni, international students, think any way you want to separate and break up your users, that's an attribute. And if you give us that information, we can then group your users by that. So these customizable columns, that's up to you, and that's extra information you want to give us. So you just fill that out, all the information you have. You would then save that file, jump back to the admin area, bulk upload, submit, and then you would add. And then you just click next, upload that file, and an email will be sent out to all those users with the activation link. And you can also modify and delete lots of accounts at once using that same process. So that's sort of, I'd say, the most time-consuming ways for the librarian. And those systems work for some libraries, but we understand the ways times are changing, things are moving on, and that's becoming perhaps a little bit sort of the old-fashioned way. If you don't have an existing user directory, we can also do a self-reg. So let me load up the NHS. So the NHS is a customer of ours, and they don't have an existing user directory, and obviously bulk upload for them, that's just too much to manage. So they kind of give the control to the user. And so this is a page that anyone can access, and this is where they send their users to register for an OpenAthens account. So this is an added service for OpenAthens, but you can fill out your, the information here is completely customizable. You choose the fields you want them for your users to give, and so your users come in here, fill out that form, and click register. Now, to stop anyone just doing this, anyone can access this page, but not everyone can get an OpenAthens account. So they have restrictions in place. So they must have an NHS email address and also register from an NHS location. Now, we can do similar things for you if you wanted to go down the self-registration route. You could have it, anyone who registers for an account is sent to a page where you then check them and agree that they're okay for an account. or again, email address or whatever it is. So that's self-registration, and that's kind of given the control to the users to create accounts. And that's kind of the end of using OpenAthens as a directory. As I mentioned, probably now the more common way we're seeing is we're connecting to existing user directories. And that's done in the management tab here. So there's management, connections, and there's local authentication. Now CKN, it being a healthcare, we find healthcare self-registration and bulk upload, that's the more common way they go, just due to the fact that user directories don't work or exist for them as easily. But in academic markets, corporates, and other sectors like that, public libraries, this seems to be the most popular way to go. And all you do is you click Add button here, and these are connections that we have set up in place. So some of these might look familiar to you. ADFS, obviously very common, CERTI Dynex. So those are mainly SAML using. There's also LDAP, and there's API for anything that may be a bit different. And this is where IT might be involved for a little bit. It's a very simple process though. With the ADFS, for example, it can be set up within a 15-minute phone call. And by connecting to your existing user directory, what it will mean is that your users can use their existing credentials, but also you can provide a true single sign-on experience. So they don't have to log in at an OpenAthens page or anything like that. They could log in to, let's say, the university intranet. Once they've logged into that intranet, they would have also started an OpenAthens token. So if they then jumped to the library and clicked on a link, it would work because they have an OpenAthens token already started. And that's true single sign-on. So that's why this is a popular route to go if available to you. Okay, so that is creating OpenAthens accounts. Once you've done that, your users are then good to go. The next popular way is statistics. But before I do jump on statistics, I want to just show you something, just because I will touch on it later, is that within OpenAthens, you can break down your organization into sub-orgs. And it's very simple to do. So the Clinical Knowledge Network, as I said, is the healthcare for the whole of Queensland. They have a top-level account called the Clinical Knowledge Network. And then after that, they've broken down all their different hospitals and clinics into different accounts. And what this means is that each one of these locations can have its own administrator, and so manage their own accounts with their their own users. But one of the key benefits for this is you can have a core set of subscription that the Clinical Knowledge Network subscribe to, and that is available then to everyone in this organization. However, if a site is, say, a specialist site, and they have a real specific resource that they want access to that no one else will need, they can go away and get their own subscription, but their users will still be able to access that content in the same way. There's no need for a new username or password. If they're from that location, so from the, say, Northwest here, if they're from that way and they have that subscription, they will access content to it. If someone else in another location found a way to that resource, they wouldn't have access to it. And it's really simple to do. With IP, this would involve lots of coding and stuff to make this work, but it's simple to do within OpenAthens. And it's a real easy way of helping to manage your subscriptions. So that's breaking down an organization into sub-orgs. Now, let me go to the resource catalog. So within OpenAthens, we try to do as much federated access as we can, as that is far more secure than IP. And what we have here is our resource catalog. And this is all the different platforms and subscriptions that work with OpenAthens. Now, if you wanted to create a new subscription for your users, it's a very simple process. So let's say you wanted to have the American Society for Microbiology as your new subscription. You've sorted out a subscription with them. And all you do then, once you've had the OK and told them you're going to be accessing via OpenAthens, you just click on this thing, select a permission set. And in here, we've got the permission sets. So CKN have it very simple in that everyone can access all content. But if you wanted to restrict your subscriptions to certain users, you could set that up in here. So let's say you had international students. They were allowed access to certain resources, but not all your resources. You would group them using that attribute that they're international, select a permission set, which would be international students, and then only they would have access to that. So that's a very interesting way of using OpenAthens, is having many permission sets for all your different groups of users. And you just click update to that permission set, and away you go. That access is now granted to those people. Or using the statistics and permission sets together, you can really manage and get a good understanding of your sort of resources. So now I will jump in to the statistics area. So there's a tab here. I'm going to open it in a new tab.
I don't know if it was, we've got a couple of questions coming. So
okay, yeah, sure. Yeah.
So the first one that's come in since is, in your demonstration, you use EBSCO Discovery Service as a launch pad for many resources. Are there other ways to use OpenAthens and have the same effect without this service?
So yes, it's up to you how you use it. So if you don't have a discovery service in place like EBSCO, that's totally fine. If you just have a page with a list of links to the resources, to journals themselves, then OpenAthens will just work that way. You click on that link and you will be authenticated through to that page. I hope that's clear. But yeah, if you want to discuss that later, we can see how your library works and show you how OpenAthens will work with that.
Okay, great, thank you. And another question is, how does it work for content providers that don't support SAML/OpenAthens authentication?
Yeah, good question, good point. So we would love everyone to use SAML and federated access, but some publishers sadly can't. And for that, it means that we have a managed proxy as part of the OpenAthens service. And that is a last resort, if you like, that if the publisher doesn't work with federated or SAML, we will then use the proxy service as a backup. So there are a couple of things you lose within that, but the OpenAthens as a whole and to the user will be the same.
And the final question is, well, it sort of ties in, so it's how many publications are in the resource catalogue, and then what happens if the publication isn't listed?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so let me jump here. So if you go to openathens.net, here you've got down in the bottom left, OpenAthens Resources. And here is a list of all the resources that we currently work with within OpenAthens. So you've got a search bar here, and it will also tell you whether they're using the proxy service, whether they're OpenAthens federated, UK federated, and Common Federation. So it's broken down by all the different federations and how they work with OpenAthens. This, obviously, we understand you've got 200 subscriptions, if you like, is going to take a lot of time. So really the best thing we recommend is, if you have your list of resources, if you could send us the URLs and the name of that resource, we can very quickly run a checker that we will make public soon, but it's not quite user-friendly yet, which we can quickly run for you and tell you exactly how all those resources will work with OpenAthens. If there is a local publisher or one which we've not come across before, we will then contact that publisher, see if they can join a federation or if they're interested in that. If not, then usually IP is a last resort, as I mentioned, and we will then set them up as an IP resource. Okay. All right, perfect. So yeah, so that's that side. So then I'm just going to jump into the statistics, the reporting module. So this is currently in beta, as you can see at the top left there. By the end of this month, I have been told it should be, all the little bugs should be ironed out, but it's fully working and I'm able to demo it to you now. This has gone in at the top level. As you can see, I'm acting as the clinical knowledge network, but there's not many at that level. So I want to then go into a Metro North, which is a slightly more populated an account within the clinical knowledge network. So there's a few more users here, so there's a bit more information. So on this homepage here, you've got a worldwide map showing where your users are accessing from. So it's pretty much Australia and USA there. You've got your top resources and total users and things like that. At this stage, this isn't sort of clickable yet, but in the final version, I have seen it. You can click on these resources here, click on the locations, and you get a much better understanding and more in-depth information on what's happening there. But this is the home page, and then on the left, you've got where you can start exploring the data. So here you've got account totals. So this will then just show you, so here not a lot's happening, but it's showing you the number of accounts that have changed over the time. And you can also see account life cycles. So it looks a bit messy here, but you can tidy up to what you want to see. You can see, which accounts have changed their password, how many accounts have been created, accounts have been deleted, and things like that. And that's looking over the last month. And you can break that down into as long a time span as you want. So you can look at the last month, the last few days, the week, the year, etc. All of that is customizable. And you can start looking at hourly, daily, and monthly. So if you're using OpenAthens as a directory, this could be quite useful for you and helpful to understand what's been going on with your OpenAthens account. But most people, when they're looking at OpenAthens and the statistics, is for resource access. So I'm just going to load up here. So this is showing all the resource access over the last month daily for the Metro North area, should I say. And then you can then break it down into the different platforms. So now you can see, EBSCO Information Service, the Australian Medicines Handbook, Therapeutic Guidelines, and Elsevier products. So you've broken it all down there, and you can see how your users are accessing with that content. Now it's quite, I'd say, high level still. It's useful. You can see your most popular resources, but you still don't quite know who is accessing what. And when you can do that is when you get into your attribute level. So remember I mentioned those attributes you released to us, the course they're on, the year they enrolled, the job role, the department they're in. You can then start pulling reports on that. So here's their attribute. I'm going to look at job role. So we've got medical student, nurse, midwives, pharmacist, and let's get rid of that one there. So now you can start seeing how these different groups of users are accessing your resources. So here you can see, definitely most popular in nurses, midwives, and you can see when they're accessing the content. Again, like I mentioned, it's completely customizable. And that's looking at all resources. But maybe you want to look at specific resources. So let's have a look at Wiley Online. Again, so now you can see that there's no students accessing Wiley Online. It's very, not very pharmacists are doing that. And so this is just giving you a really good idea of now how your users are accessing the content. And it means you can start looking at those resources that you thought were really popular, might only be popular to a small group of users who are accessing it a lot. And so you might have a subscription-wide access to that journal, that resource, when actually that's not necessary. You only need it for, say, 100 people. And so with using the permission sets within OpenAthens, you can make sure that only those 100 people have access to that, and then maybe get a reduction in your subscription to that resource, enabling you to then get more specific resources to, those more specific courses, job roles that it may be that have an interest in that sort of content. So you can go as crazy as you want on this. You can literally report on anything, any information that you choose to give to us. And all of these reports, they can be set up to be emailed to you directly to your inbox each day or month. So there's no need to come in here and actually pull up the reports, put all the functions in. You can just save it down here and have it emailed to you each month. So yes, be really simple. And what this is all about is trying to prove and show the value of the library. To be able to say, look, our users are using this much, how much, and from that, how much they're getting out of it. So for example, with students, they're doing reports showing, students who have the highest come out of the highest qualification at the end of a degree, how much are those users accessing the resources? And they can go back and have a look and, seeing if there's a positive correlation between library use and the end degree and things. So you can see how maybe doing these reports might be useful to yourselves. There's another way in which you might do specific marketing at a public library, for example, and You then want to see if that marketing actually had an effect at a specific area. If you've registered or given us the attribute, say, zip code, postcode of those users, you can then see if usage increased after that marketing targeted campaign. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just a couple of ideas of what people, use OpenAthens statistics for, but, you can come up with your own as well. And we'd be really interested to hear what you would want to use these for, and then, we can help you with that to make the most of it. This is a really key area that with, IP, for example, all your recording is where your users are accessing from. That's all you can get. But with OpenAthens, you can actually do those individual users, and it provides all this key information for you. In corporate areas, if you're down by department, you can actually prove which departments are using the resource, and so then you can charge them appropriately. There's no way in which someone can say, oh no, we don't use it, we're not paying for that subscription. Well, actually, you can come back and say, yes, your users are, and here's the proof for it. Yeah, so that is OpenAthens. Hopefully the little, the tidied up version will be out by the end of the month, but it's good to go. And yeah, I hope you can see it all working there and how useful that could be to you. Jumping back to the admin area now, I pretty much have showed you everything that I kind of wanted to show. Hopefully you get an idea how simple it is. If, for example, you did want to set up a permission set, again, it's done in here, the resource tab, there's permission sets. As I mentioned, so you can have it deleted, but if as default for everyone, but if you wanted to, you would set up a description here, and then the role is the attribute you release to us to group the users into that permission set. So if it was alumni, international students, etc., that will be there. And you just create that, and that is a permission set up. So it is very simple to do. So that, I mean, there are other parts in here. We do have a redirector, schema editor. There's bits of information and stuff in here. That's getting quite in depth and technical. And if you would like to look at those, then we can follow that up sort of more on a one-to-one basis afterwards. I hope from what you can see in this is we like to think OpenAthens is designed by librarians for librarians. So we have lots of user groups and customer conferences, where we feedback we take the feedback you give us and that information, we ask what you would like, and we try and build that into our development. So with the statistics and the reporting module, that is a new reporting module that will be released this month, and it's open to all users. And if you have an OpenAthens subscription, your subscription isn't going to change. You get that new feature, that new function, and we are constantly trying to bring out those new features for you. As I mentioned, very little need for IT to be involved. There's no running for them for, coding or anything like that to pull reports from servers. It's all done for you on here on the click of a button. Hopefully, giving you more time, saving up your time, and getting your responses as quick as you want. If there's anything you can't do, we have a support team, a support desk here, who'll be happy to take your call and to help you out. Okay, so that's kind of everything I wanted to show. I don't know if we have any more questions at this time. Yeah, I think we do. Okay.
So we have got a couple more questions that have come in, but as I said, do put them in the question box, and we still have plenty of time to answer those. So the question for now is: our institution currently uses LDAP for our college user directory, and our library uses Cersei Dynex. We've been trying to figure out a way to connect the two so that the student, staff, faculty do not have to use two separate logins. Can OpenAthens help us with this?
Okay, so that, I think we might have to follow up afterwards, I'm afraid, just to actually understand how, we can work with that. So we can connect to both of those systems, yes. It depends which one you may want to use there. I don't know if we could work as the in-between of LDAP and Cersei, but that is certainly something I'm happy to follow up maybe with a technical person after this call, but I'll look into that.
And another question is, will OpenAthens help us with login page customizations, or are those the responsibility of the library?
So is that, so for example, the CKM page, if that's it, that is something that you would control. The login page that the user comes up against, we would either be your user directory, or there is a generic OpenAthens login page. I'll follow up with some screenshots of that afterwards.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, I work for a commercial organisation. Are we able to use the OpenAthens services?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. As I mentioned, you know, across all markets, we try and cater and have specific features for each one.
And we have really high turnover. We have periods of really high turnover for users. How do we remove these?
So there is a delete function within OpenAthens to delete accounts whenever you like. So that will depend on how you use OpenAthens. So if you have an OpenAthens directory where you've created the OpenAthens accounts, you would have to manually go in there using the bulk upload or the individual user to delete those accounts. If you are connected to an existing user directory, when they leave your organization, they will also leave the OpenAthens. They won't have an OpenAthens account anymore.
And the final question that's come in for the moment is, the publisher site that I would want to connect to only supports Shibboleth, so can I use OpenAthens?
Yep, certainly. It's the same technology. That's just a bit of wording that's going on there, but that will be a federated resource. So yes, no problems.
And we've had a question about pricing. So yeah, again, that will be one for James to follow up. We have, I've added a quick survey onto the end of the webinar, so if you're happy to answer that, and it's just asking if you'd like to provide receive a quote afterwards. So yeah, we'll gather your answers from there, and then James can contact you. But yeah, that is all the questions, and yeah, thank you again for joining us, and thanks to James for great information as always. There's James's details if you want to give him a call. Yeah, the follow-up email will be going out tomorrow afternoon, which will contain the link to the recording. Feel free to share this with your colleagues, your friends, whoever you feel will also be interested. And yeah, hopefully we'll hear from you soon.
Yep, thank you everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.